Late one night, I sat at my desk, staring in disbelief at my electricity bill. It had doubled, way higher than usual. My heart pounded as unease settled in. Something wasn't right. I rushed around my house, checking every appliance, flipping light switches, unplugging devices, but nothing explained the sudden surge in cost. What was happening? Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement near my driveway. My pulse quickened as I squinted through the darkness. There, hidden in the shadows, was Karen, my neighbor. She crept up to my house like a thief in the night and, unbelievably, plugged her electric car into my outdoor outlet. My jaw nearly hit the floor. How long had she been doing this? Without wasting a second, I rushed to my security camera footage, my hands shaking as I pulled up the recordings. And what I saw made my blood boil. This wasn't a one-time thing, oh no. Karen had been stealing my electricity for weeks. I clenched my fists. She really thought she could get away with this? She assumed I wouldn't notice? Well, she was dead wrong. If Karen wanted free electricity, I was about to give her a shocking surprise she'd never forget. I live in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood where the HOA is notorious for handing out fines over the smallest infractions, things like a trash can being left out too long or a lawn growing an inch too high. But when it came to Karen, she seemed to operate by an entirely different rulebook. She strutted around as if she owned the place, twisting the rules to suit her needs while making life miserable for everyone else. If there was a petty complaint to be made, Karen was the first to report it. But when it came to her own actions, suddenly, the rules didn't seem to apply. So, when she recently bought an electric car, you'd think she would have installed a charging station like a responsible homeowner. But no, that would be too much work for Karen. Instead, she found a much easier solution, stealing my electricity. At first, I wanted to believe it was just a mistake. Maybe she had plugged in once by accident, thinking it was her own outlet. But when my bills skyrocketed, I started keeping a closer watch. And that's when I caught her, late at night, sneaking into my driveway like some low-level criminal, plugging her car into my outlet as if it were hers to use. The next morning, I marched over to confront her, expecting, at the very least, some kind of apology. But do you know what she did? She smirked at me. Smirked. And then she denied everything, even when I shoved the video evidence in her face. Then, as if that wasn't bad enough, she had the audacity to threaten me. She claimed that if I didn't leave her alone, she'd report me to the HOA for harassing her. That was it. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. It was time for some payback. Karen thought she had won. She thought she could steal from me, lie about it, and just get away with it. But what she didn't realize was she had picked the wrong person to mess with. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her drain my electricity like it was her personal property. No. If she wanted to play games, I was about to take it to the next level. First, I needed solid proof, not just for myself, but to make sure no one, not even the HOA, could ignore what she was doing. The security footage I had was good, but I wanted undeniable evidence, something that left zero room for her lies. So, I set up an additional camera, positioning it at the perfect angle to capture every sneaky, late-night visit. Then, I installed a timer on the outlet that logged exactly when and how long it was being used. And that's when I discovered something even worse. I wasn't the only victim. One evening, I casually brought up the situation with my next-door neighbor, Mr. Peterson, an older gentleman who had lived in the neighborhood for years. I expected mild surprise, maybe some sympathy. Instead, his face darkened. "You too," he muttered. Turns out Karen had been doing this for months. Not just to me, but to at least 2 other neighbors. The difference? They had suspicions but no proof. Well, guess what? Now, I had proof, and I was about to use it. Since confronting Karen had been useless, she had laughed in my face, lied through her teeth, and even threatened me. It was clear that she wasn't going to stop on her own. So, I needed a way to make her stop. That's when the idea hit me. If Karen wanted free electricity, I would give her some. But not in the way she expected. I got to work, carefully rewiring the outdoor outlet. Instead of connecting it to my actual power supply, I linked it to a separate battery, one with just enough charge to turn on, but not nearly enough to power anything. Then, I installed a hidden speaker nearby, one programmed to play a very special message at the perfect moment. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait. That night, I stayed up late, eyes glued to my security feed. And there she was. Just past midnight, Karen slinked out of her house, glancing around like some kind of second-rate criminal. But this time, she wasn't even trying to be sneaky. She walked straight up to my driveway, plugged in her charger, and leaned casually against her car, waiting for it to power up. Except this time it didn't. A few seconds later, the hidden speaker activated. A booming voice shattered the silent night. Warning! You are stealing electricity. This incident has been recorded and reported to the authorities. Karen jumped like she had been electrocuted. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. For a second, she just froze, completely paralyzed. Then, in full-blown panic, she ripped the charger out, fumbled with it, and bolted back to her house, as if her life depended on it. I watched the whole thing unfold from my phone, barely able to contain my laughter. She was terrified. And that was just the beginning. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. It was perfect, crystal-clear video of Karen sneaking into my driveway, plugging in her car, and then running away in terror when the message played. There was no way she could deny this now. So I took action. I compiled all the evidence and sent it straight to the HOA with a formal complaint. I expected them to respond quickly. After all, this was a clear case of theft. But instead, silence. Days passed. No action. No response. Frustrated, I followed up, only to receive vague replies and empty promises. That's when I realized Karen had connections. Maybe she had friends on the board. Maybe they just didn't want to deal with it. But you know what? I didn't need them, because I was far from done. Once I had all the footage I needed, I didn't just send it to the HOA. I took it straight to my neighbors, the ones Karen had been stealing from. And the moment they saw the undeniable proof, the real pressure began. Mr. Peterson was the first to act. He wasn't just angry, he was livid. The very next HOA meeting, he stormed in and demanded action, slamming the printed screenshots onto the table for everyone to see. Another neighbor stood up in agreement. Then another. And another. Before long, the entire room was buzzing with heated discussions about Karen's blatant electricity theft. The HOA had no choice. With so many homeowners furious and publicly calling her out, they couldn't sweep this under the rug any longer. The pressure was too intense. The board members exchanged nervous glances, knowing they had ignored Karen's behavior for too long. And finally, they acted. Karen was hit with a massive fine, not just for stealing my electricity, but for tampering with private property and violating multiple HOA rules. But that wasn't all. The HOA passed a new rule on the spot. Karen was permanently banned from charging her car anywhere in the neighborhood unless she installed her own private charging station. It was a brutal, humiliating blow. And let me tell you, I wasn't done yet. Karen was furious. That smug, arrogant confidence she always carried, completely gone. In its place was sheer panic. At the next HOA meeting, she shrieked at the board, her face red with frustration. This is harassment. I'm being bullied. It was just a misunderstanding. But the evidence didn't lie. The security footage clearly showed her sneaking onto multiple properties, plugging in her car without permission, and then bolting like a criminal the moment she got caught. And if that wasn't bad enough, my neighbors had stories of their own. One by one, they stood up and shared how their electricity bills had mysteriously spiked. How they had suspected something, but hadn't been able to prove it until now. For the first time since she moved in, Karen wasn't in control anymore. The HOA didn't just fine her. They went all in. Not only was she forced to pay back every single cent of the stolen electricity, but she was also banned from using any outdoor outlets in the neighborhood. If she wanted to charge her car, she would have to spend her own money and install a station inside her garage. Karen tried to fight back. She searched for loopholes, argued with the board, even tried to gain sympathy, but no one cared. She had gotten away with too much for too long, and now she had finally crossed the line. For the first time ever, Karen had lost. And she knew it. After that meeting, Karen was like a different person. The arrogant, rule-breaking neighbor who used to strut around like she owned the place?
Gone.
She stopped making snide remarks, stopped filing petty complaints, stopped glaring at me whenever we crossed paths. In fact, she wouldn't even make eye contact anymore. It was almost funny. For years, she had spent her time making everyone else feel uncomfortable, acting like she was above the rules. And now, she was the one who couldn't handle the judgment. But the best part? My neighbors and I weren't about to take any chances. After everything Karen had pulled, none of us wanted to risk another entitled neighbor trying the same stunt. So we all installed lockable outdoor outlets, making sure no one, not Karen, not anyone, could ever pull that trick again. And then something unexpected happened. A few months later, I noticed something new in Karen's yard. A for sale sign. I couldn't help but smile. She was running away. Maybe it was the fines. Maybe it was the public humiliation. Or maybe she just couldn't stand living in a neighborhood where she no longer had control. Whatever the reason, she was leaving. And honestly,
Good.
riddance. Some people think they can get away with anything, that the rules don't apply to them, that they can take what they want, lie to your face, and walk away without consequences. Karen thought she could steal from me. She thought she could deny it. She thought she could win. But in the end, she was the one who lost. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's smart revenge. And trust me, nothing is sweeter than watching an entitled neighbor get exactly what they deserve.